Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com. Today I'm talking about grave digging. Yes, this is a wonderful topic, not literally grave digging, but we're getting into thinking different. The Gravedigger's theory. I'm going to elaborate on a piece I wrote last week. This is fascinating stuff. It's about going another way. It's about not following the flock. And of course, that is critical to pure creativity. Welcome to the Creative Condition. Hello, how are you doing, guys? My name is Ben Talon. I am your host, founder of the Creative Condition, creativity coach, illustrator of 18 years, writer, and more. Listing titles gets comical as we go through these creative careers, isn't it? Especially when we've got curious minds and we tend to go another way and lean into what makes all of this exciting and at times terrifying. But we're going to talk about grave digging today. I wrote a little piece last week called Grave Digging and Beautiful Difference. You might have seen it on LinkedIn. You might have seen it on thecreativecondition.com. If you follow the article section on there, I wrote it as a piece. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into thinking different today. And we're going to talk about, well, a wonderful story that came from a book called Facts Club. The Facts Club Experiment. These guys are going to be on the show soon. It's the first time in 10 years that I have failed to hit record on the podcast. I was interviewing 4 people from Facts Club. Adam Holloway, Claire Gillespie, Grace Rogers and Judy Andrews. And we had a great chat. We coordinated all 4 of our diaries. We got the volume levels right, and we finished the chat. I breathed a sigh of relief afterwards that it went so well. Hung up the call, kicked back, and noticed there was no little window telling me that the file was downloading. And in a second, I knew what I'd done. And I am not an angry man. It takes a lot for me to get truly angry. I have to be really, really pushed to the limit. But I roared and screamed a bunch of expletives and open palm smacked my studio floor. I could have cried, and I almost did. I went in the house to see my poor wife, Laura, and she's doing some bits around the house, and just the minute she looked at me, she's like, "Oh, what?" And I just, 10, 15 minutes of ultimate self-loathing. Inside about 3 minutes, I emailed the guys from Facts Club confessing what had happened. Very fortunately for me, they were truly, truly lovely people, and they loved the chat too. So they said, "It's all right. Don't beat yourself up. We get it. It's human error. We can do it again." So I thought to myself, well, okay, what might have happened there had I not fucked up the recording, or just not done the recording is more accurate in this instance. And lots of things emanated from it. We actually had a slightly better sound on the second one, and a lot happened in between. And by virtue of this being the second call, I asked my questions slightly differently. Zeroed in on certainly different bits, and in the end we all loved it. But one of the things that came from that conversation was the Gravedigger's theory, which I had not come across before, which is amazing. See, that's a term from journalism, you see. And what I'm going to do is I'll read you the piece. I'm going to elaborate on certain bits for today's podcast because I think it's important stuff. And when I do my coaching work with clients, this is something that comes up time and time again, thinking differently, not falling into what former guest on the show, Duncan Wardle, who was the head of innovation and creativity at Disney, calls the river of thinking. And it's a kind of institutionalized thinking or a trend-based thought pattern, the way that we give what we're expected to do, or we end up unconsciously falling into patterns of repeating what we have done or the way things are done, And this story is about going another way and about the sheer possibility of doing something interesting by doing that. Quick thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, who've been here since the very beginning, suggested it in the first place and helped me get it off the ground. Eternally grateful to Illustration X. And check out their global range of illustrator and animator portfolios now. For any kind of artist you want to work with, they do live, fashion, editorial, scientific, realism, abstract, you name it, it's all on there. And they have a fantastic news section on the website too that you can follow along to get the inside scoop on certain projects, how it worked with the clients and all that. illustrationx.com. Please do consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute. They are doing amazing work to support the embattled and brave Ukrainian creative community at this horrible time of war. You can share the work, you can look at the work, you could commission somebody. There's so much you can do, but it's worth a minute of your eye time over at ui.org.ua. So what have you guys been up to? Let me know, but get in touch. I don't hear very much from people these days, and I know it's kind of the way, isn't it, with podcasts? I don't tend to message the people from the ones that I love. And I guess it's just what we do. We sort of get into a habit of listening to certain shows. And I know that plenty of you do listen, and that's very appreciated. But I do also love to hear feedback. And, of course, if you can support the show with a little rating, review, or subscription, that would also be incredible. I would be so grateful of that. So please do consider it. But let's get into Gravedigger's theory. Oh, I should also say, if you are interested in working one-to-one, of course, the Creative Condition is all about supporting people's creativity, no matter the budget. There is a reading list. There are 300 plus archival episodes of this podcast put there for you guys to learn from for free, thanks to the sponsors of the show. So there's all that. But if you want to work with me one-to-one, I am loving the creativity coaching this year. I have a session called The Pit Stop, which is a deep dive, no stone unturned. Takes between 3 and 4 hours. It's intensive stuff. It's personal, it gets funny. We go into your sense of humour, your origin story, your current situation, your frustrations, your blocks, opportunities and broader skills. We look at everything. We look at environment. We look at hormones if needs be. We really, really get into you as an individual. And at the end of that, I write up recommended notes, suggestions and supporting exercises and try to give you something of a roadmap, an action plan moving forward for your creativity. If that sounds good, if you could do with some help getting realigned, getting back on your optimum path, leaning back into your story and personality, then maybe that's one for you. Give me a shout. I do sessions also, 90-minute session, slightly lower cost than the Pit Stop, trying to make it as accessible as I can. I have a Creative Condition talk. If you're a business and you want to get me in to come and talk about the nature of creativity and the opportunity for amazing creativity, then I would be well up for that too. So let me know. Visit thecreativecondition.com/coach for the info. So let's get into it. Grave digging and beautiful difference. Here's a piece I wrote. I'm going to talk through it. I'm going to jump off at certain points and elaborate. For the first time in a decade of podcasting, I neglected the minor detail of hitting record for an entire 1-hour conversation. The unfortunate The Facts Club Experiment Project members Adam Holloway, Claire Gillespie, Grace Rogers and Judy Andrews showed me mercy and came back for a second sitting. The kind response came with much relief, as this wonderfully deep and human project deserves greedy helpings of attention, and I wanted to contribute at least a dollop to that through the Creative Condition podcast. The project was conceived by the Do Lectures founder, Adam Hyatt. Invited members were sworn to secrecy, asked to source a fax machine, then ponder and eventually answer a question that would emerge from the archaic contraption every Friday afternoon. So before I carry on, I'm going to read you the blurb from the Facts Club Experiment. What if the breakthrough you need is hiding in a question you haven't asked yet? It's 5 p.m. on a Friday and a fax machine buzzes with counterintuitive question. One that challenges everything you thought you knew. One that makes you uncomfortable. One that had no easy answers. How would you respond? What would you dare to write if nobody knew who you were? How could it change what you think and believe? 100 people started. By week 52, only 32 remained. Their journey will transform how you think about connection, creativity, and abstract thinking. Inside, discover 52 mind-bending questions that bypass small talk and unlock authentic thinking. Real answers from real people facing life's biggest challenges. Proof that slowing down in a fast world might be the most radical act of all. Transform how you think, connect and solve problems, with lessons from artists, entrepreneurs, job seekers, CEOs and parents who dared to think differently. Ready to question everything? It's a really amazing book. I loved it, and I've read it several times. I keep dipping back in. It's one of those books you don't have to read it in chronological order. You can kind of just open it and land on a question, and it really does provoke some deep thinking. So back to the piece. The questions demanded deeper thinking, different thinking, and slower consideration. Things we can all benefit from in this 1,000 miles an hour information-saturated world. Some questions involved challenges, such as going into a coffee shop and asking for a discount, a task many members couldn't bring themselves to carry out. Others presented uncomfortable truths. That's very true. There's a lot of discomfort throughout this book, and the challenges, we talk about this when we come to do the Facts Club Experiment podcast. But there's one of the challenges where someone has to go into a coffee shop and ask for discount on a coffee. Most people couldn't do it. It's just stuff that knock you out of your comfort zone and really get you to think differently about the world we've come to accept as just the way it is in certain ways. And isn't that critical for any kind of progress or pioneering or moving forward? Discomfort is essential to that. And I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling a lot of discomfort at the moment as I try to build my coaching practice. There have been so many moments where I've had to go to someone who I feel could be a good fit for a coaching session and tell them that. But this isn't like a big brand or corporation that I'm working with. This is an individual artist who I want to help. So for me to then turn around and go, it costs this much, that feels horrible. And I'm not used to that. I kind of am over the 18 years of doing it with bigger clients, but not with individuals. And it feels daunting. But a number of those people where I've done that have gone, yeah, you know what, you've timed this perfectly. I am thinking this. Let's do it. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, that can pay off. And it's terrifying every time, especially as someone who's suffered, as you'll know by now, any regular listeners to the show, a lot of anxiety this last year to 3 years. So, it's fascinating on that level. I wanted to know what this 1 year long experiment was like for those in it. You will get to know, like I said, on the upcoming podcast. But there's a brilliant story in the book that we discussed about Jimmy Breslin, a journalist who, when presented with the opportunity to cover JFK's funeral like the rest of the world's media, chose instead to interview Clifton Pollard, the man tasked with digging the grave. Now, isn't that spellbinding? Isn't that amazing? Like the bravery to peel off and go, no, do you know what? Everyone else is doing that. And as amazing as it is, as era-defining as that event was, I'm going to go over there and do that. And what's more exciting? Maybe it's hindsight, because JFK's funeral and sad passing was covered and continues to be covered as much as it has. But I also think it just speaks to difference and the person who was brave enough to go a different route and do something as amazing as that and interview the Gravedigger, and he talks about his his gratitude for being given that responsibility, and I was going to do the best job that he could, like he does for every grave that he digs. And there's just so much in that. And I love David Hyatt's thinking in coining the idea for this book, thinking differently even in just doing that, by going back to analog media and doing something at a slower pace. And, it's like I'm telling you today, this is a Monday lunchtime at the time I'm recording this, and I feel nervous today. I feel really quite anxious this morning. I've turned a lot of positive corners recently, but I've got family staying, so it's been a very busy weekend. It's been very hectic, and coming into a Monday morning at the best of times, I feel a little bit glum or slow, or just looking out the window at the bad weather, and it's not raining today, but it's still very grey and gloomy. It's still very, I'm going to say very January. We've just crept into February, but it's very this time of year. And I'm even recording this with my eyes closed as I speak to you through puffy eyelids, and it's just the pace of the world and the lack of ability to slow down sometimes and reflect and think what really is best for us to make decisions is very hard to come by, and that's very overwhelming. And they always say, the psychologists, that, if your stress cup is full. Today my stress cup is full. I can feel it. Probably going to go for a long walk with the dog early afternoon and maybe the family, because I just aren't feeling great. And I think that something like the Gravedigger theory, it manages just to pull me out of my own head a little bit and get me excited again about the essence of creativity. And I know there's so much talk out there at the moment about algorithms and AI and clients demanding more for less, and quicker turnaround, less budget, all that stuff, and people just kind of giving the minimum or the expected. And we've all done it. We've all done jobs where it's either not gone to plan and we've been rushed towards a deadline and we've had to just deliver something that was competent. Or maybe the client is just not willing to see a bigger creative picture, and therefore you serve them what they set out to get and don't feel great about that. But I think that it's very important to think, in this way about going and interviewing someone different, or, just going the different track and pushing ourselves to keep doing that. So if we don't slow down, then we really don't get in that unconscious headspace that allows us to see different ways. In journalism, this became known as the Gravedigger theory. And isn't that what it's about? Not blindly following the flock, being brave enough to stand out for the creative greater good. That's how pioneers become pioneers. It's what many of us fantasize about when we envision what a career in the arts might look like. Art college was full of people fresh from school, wearing ludicrous outfits, conceiving even wilder assignment responses, and it all felt possible, even if it looked preposterous, and the work was embryonic at best. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy. We learn from those already doing what we aspire to do, and when the examples they set are so wonderful, why wouldn't we want to pick up the baton? But what people forget so easily is that their story, their lived experience and personality should lead everything. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen Buddhist monk, spoke profound words when he said, "The way out is in." It can take years to apply the Gravedigger theory with confidence when uncertainty and skepticism face us at every turn, but it's where the real magic happens. I only formally trained as an illustrator. The rest, podcasting, interviewing, biography writing, fiction writing, non-fiction writing, and coaching, are all skills learned on the job, by being utterly passionate and working through inevitable terror, trying, failing, trying again. By conventional standards, I'm probably still failing in most areas, but you can be either more than, less than, or different from, and the latter is how I chose to be from a very young age. This isn't a brag. I've spent many hours in a state of self-loathing because too many side projects have bombed or wasted what little money I have. But the magic of the Jimmy Breslin approach is just too alluring to a brain like mine that needs to find out, that needs to play. To return to Buddhist teachings, we creative industry folk are impermanent, transient makers who, without taking shaky steps in new directions, run the risk of mediocrity, stagnation, and frustration with our place in the arts. I see it all the time. I work to help people identify the absence of jeopardy or newness and look once more inside for the compass. It's always there, and it'll point you towards the cemetery. Will you take that step? So just to reflect, to go back to the bit about being untrained, it feels terrifying, really fucking terrifying all of the time. I mean, part of my feeling anxious this morning is, it's been another quiet couple of weeks. Nothing coming through the agency, nothing coming personally, no new coaching bookings. And it throws you into overthinking when you work, especially when you work on your own and experience a lot of isolation. It really does. And your brain follows patterns. So when nothing comes, your brain almost predicts that outcome again and fills you with fear. It activates what's the response? I've gone blank. Not the panic response, the fear response, the fight, flight, freeze. It activates that. The innate alarm response, let's call it that. And I think that we all get that. And so many of us spend our days and our weeks in that. And it's antithetical to the nature of creativity, which thrives on optimism and curiosity. Today, I'm not particularly feeling it. I'm on a minimums day. I'm ticking the boxes, I'm getting the work done, I'm keeping my head down. But it's hard, and I want to snap out of this. This has been so prevalent over the last few years. But when it comes to starting the new things and kind of following my heart, I've always promised myself that I'd do that and not in a crazy way that I'm completely jeopardising everything I do. But there's always risk with starting something new. And it was fellow coach Marco Fan who I saw say in one of his newsletters, which I highly recommend, by the way, it's on LinkedIn, saying that the misconception that confidence comes before action is one that holds so many people back. And it's so true. And in my own career, I've always taken the action, you know, whether it was picking up Harry Lyon-Smith's suggestion that I might be good at podcasting and that if I could do it, they would sponsor it. So I kind of ran away and spent some time on YouTube and watching these teenage American kids teaching me how to use GarageBand and buying a microphone and, you know, doing all of that stuff. And ultimately, I've had 10 joyous years of hearing so many great stories and getting so much more rounded sense of an understanding of creativity. And that has opened doors into more public speaking, into commissions. You know, there's an ecosystem here that works where things feed the other things that I do. And it's really interesting. So I would implore you to do the same and apply that Gravedigger's theory. Don't be afraid to do the new things that you're going to do in the way that only you could do. You know, I've spent a lot of time over the years worrying about the quality of this show because at times, you know, let's face it, if I'm on a tube with a handheld Zoom mic interviewing someone like Liz Atkin, going back to, I think, about episode 40 of this show, Liz was doing this amazing project about drawing in charcoal on the free Metro newspapers on the London Underground because she had a condition called skin picking disorder. And it not only helped her to keep her brains and her hands busy, but it also enabled her to spread joy on the tube by handing these drawings to people. And it was a really beautiful thing. I remember she ended up going to Singapore doing it and all around the world. And, you know, for that personal vulnerability to fuel Liz's practice is inspiring. But I thought differently. I thought, well, actually, I'm going to forego a little audio quality here and I'm going to do it ad hoc on the tube because that's where Liz is. That's where this project's taking place. And what great human story and what context to do that with. So that's what we did. And I've always tried to do that in everything and I always will. Like I said, terrifying, anxiety-inducing many, many times, too often in fact. But ultimately, for me, the right way to do it is a creative. More of us have to do that if we're going to repel or find another way to reconfigure with AI, you know, because that stuff is amalgamation, it is trend. It's going to pull together results from across the board, which doesn't result in innovation or individuality or originality. I know it's impossible to be truly original. Our ideas, of course, are coming from the world around us, our own experiences and everything else. But we have to do that. We have to fight for it. Anyway, that's the Gravedigger's theory. I recommend you look it up. I highly recommend you grab the Facts Club Experiment, which is absolutely amazing. You can find their website at thefactsclubexperiment.com. I think it's on Amazon too. Plenty of good reviews. I need to drop my own on there, actually, come to think of it. But it's a great book, and I recommend that. And they're coming up on the podcast soon. Super project. Remember, Gravedigger's theory. What's the grave you're going to dig? What are you going to go and do different? I would love your thoughts on all of this. Cheers for listening, guys. Please do consider leaving a rating, a review, subscription. It all massively helps the show. Tell a friend. That's also really meaningful, really helps. Thank you. Have a great week, guys. Stay creative. Get in touch, ben@bentalon.com if you want to drop me a note. Always love to hear from you. If you want some one-to-one coaching, do the same. We can talk about that. Head to the website at thecreativecondition.com/coach for all the info on that. Cheers. Have a lovely week. See you guys.